It chirped, which means it's time again for another mostly out of focus, never truly in frame edition of the In Bed Reading Series. I'm JB. Hey, last time we read Charles Bukowski, and I wanted to give you another view of drunkenness and LA. So, Eve Babitz, Sex and Rage. I'm going to read two short chapters. One is called The Drinking Problem. So let's just Jacaranda had a drinking problem. It seemed to have crept up on her about the same time Max did. Not that it was Max's fault, perhaps. Anyway, writers all had drinking problems in the 20th century, and once she got that $10,000 check, she was obviously a writer, and it was obviously the 20th century, so of course she had a drinking problem. She discovered what most writers insist is true nowadays, which is that they can only write for 3 hours a day at most. What else is there to do but drink? She was, after all, so glad that she'd turned out to be a writer, since if her drinking problem had been what it was, she'd only been a Xerox operator. She might well have been tempted to go to AA. In fact, she recommended becoming a published author to all people with drinking problems. A writer can blunder through life like Norman Mailer, with his tiny fists striking out at cocktail parties, and all anyone will think is that he's a classic drunk writer. If he did something like that and worked at PIP, one of the muscle-bound stock boys would break his head. Alright, second chapter. The 3rd of July, Unbidden Aside. Jacaranda, by July, had so devastated all she had in the way of that present that any possibilities of her having a future looked remote indeed. In June, she'd gotten drunk at a party and screamed at Shelby and forced him out of state, flying on wings of an angel, flying away to Maui, where he had friends and no phone who'd hide him, where the fury of Jacaranda's drunken wrath could not reach him. Nearly all of her friends were afraid of her, except the ones who drank as much as she did. The morning after, they all make those tentative 11:30 phone calls of shameful excuses to each other, beginning with, "Did I leave my address book at your place?" to see if they were still speaking to each other after the unspeakable things they said and done the night before. If the reply was as if nothing had happened, then life could go on. And it did with Jacaranda, so that by July her only friends were the ones who could be counted on to forget their address books. It was amazing that during this time Jacaranda didn't make any lifelong enemies. She would go to the Bamboo Cafe every night and ask movie producers, "Are you really casting Cher or Medea?" Or to her artist friends she'd say, "Kurt Schwitter's already did that. Twice." And it was even more amazing that people whom she'd insulted and apologized to the next day, whom she insulted again that very evening, were the people who afterwards said, "I never knew you drank. You were really drunk that whole time." Years and years and years were pocked with holes of things Jacaranda simply couldn't remember, with people Jacaranda didn't remember meeting, conversations she didn't remember having, promises and parties and great ideas and projects Jacaranda didn't remember hurling herself into. Mostly she forgot entirely, or else hurling along she accidentally found herself in approximately the right spot at approximately the right time, and people mistakenly assumed she was reliable or too early or had written the wrong address on the wrong day. The years, as far as Jacaranda were concerned, from the time she met Max when she was 23 until she jumped off the barge when she was 28, were tilted jello salad. They shimmered if you prodded them. And towards the end, the last 2 years, they grew murky because of all the canned fruit. That canned fruit had, from the natural law of gravity, gravitated towards the drunkest end, the end that was in the deepest liquid. The first 3 years before she'd written that piece and it was published shimmered like glorious turquoise blue postcard sky jello, like a memory Jacaranda had had of the Salton Sea, which she had seen when she was little. She remembered that there was a petrified ocean, an ocean that was caught inland while the rest of the ocean departed. You could see down to the bottom, so far, absolutely clear turquoise, all the sea life that belonged to the ocean, starfish, sea anemone, things that didn't belong in an inland body of water. a lake which usually had trout or salmon. But the Salton Sea was absolutely clear and absolutely pure and absolutely ancient. Jacaranda had heard that in the Caribbean you could see down 40 or 50 feet to the bottom. The Salton Sea didn't move unless you touched it. It was unbidden by the moon. It had no tides. It lay there, perfect beauty, perfect stillness, out in the middle of the desert. The Salton Sea had been like a barge of the ocean floating atop the sandy desert, and those years, pickled in vodka and white wine and money and Rolls-Royce limousines and the soft, clear, white ease of the barge, the informality and the private comforts had all been hosted by the droll, shimmery, and turquoise and eternally surprised, "You're here!" By the time Jacaranda jumped off the barge, she had an allergic reaction to alcohol. She needed only one drink to be 5 drinks drunk, and she was always that one drink. She always got 5 drinks drunk, and 5 drinks drunk. She drank until she blacked out. Not a soul except April noticed how much she drank, or that she was an alcoholic with all the symptoms they ask you about on the TV questionnaires. 1. Does alcohol intrude on your personal life? 2. Does alcohol intrude on your professional life? Up to number 10, do you sometimes have a drink in the morning? Jacaranda could say forthrightly, with sincerity and staunchly, yes, yes, to all 10, and nobody she knew noticed except April. If Mother knew how much you drank, she'd die, April said, and that's why I'm not going to tell her. She had enough trouble going to sleep, thinking about you and that Max person. Again, Eve Babitz, Sex and Rage. The In Bed Reading Series. I'm JB. We'll be back again in a couple of days. Maybe I'll read some of mine. Maybe I'll read some Bob Kaufman. We'll see what happens. Hope everybody's staying safe. Have a good night.